at 5. Oregon up to 6. Ole Miss idle, dropping to 7. Oklahoma at 8. Notre Dame at 9. Alabama would be the last team in here because you'd have, well, right now, Miami, the projected representative out of the ACC, but that's going to be tough to make that a reality. Tulane, the group of 5 representative out of the American as the 12 seed. First team out, according to Brad Crawford, would be BYU. All right, back here with Cardale Jones, Richard Johnson, and welcome in the aforementioned Brad Crawford. Brad, let's start here with Ole Miss, who was idle this week, dropping a spot in your projected bracket. But Lane Kiffin was far from idle. Lane Kiffin's future in Oxford in limbo. Do you think the drama will have any impact on Ole Miss in the CFP rankings?
I think it will, specifically the week after next. I think this week they get a pass. I spoke to a source close to the committee a few days ago after the LSU speculation really came out. And what they told me was they think Ole Miss's seeding will be affected. Perhaps they lose a first-round home game opportunity. But as long as they beat Mississippi State, the Rebels that is, on Black Friday later this week, then they think Ole Miss will be in the playoff at 11-1. I have to agree with that. It would be completely unfair to the players to take Ole Miss out of this mix. But if Ole Miss loses the Egg Bowl to the Bulldogs and they become one of those 4 or 5 10-win teams in that at-large discussion, then I think an argument could be made where the committee could then point to that protocol factor where it says you lose a key player or a coach. In this case, you're going to lose an entire staff. So I think it's very strange that we've seen this for the first time, but we did see precedent a few years ago when Jordan Travis got hurt in the second to last game before the season and FSU got left out.
One thing that I find interesting about these rankings is where you've got Oregon, because when you slide Oregon up, it's interesting because Oregon could find their way into the byes, depending on how it works with the conference championship, in my opinion. Just my opinion, Brad. Do you see it that way? You know, the loser of the conference championship games, they would fall out of this top 4 that you have, and then Oregon could find their way in there at 4 if they beat Washington next week?
I think it's certainly possible, especially if Texas A&M is a loser. I think Texas A&M could potentially lose to Alabama, lose a top 4 seed, and then maybe Georgia's the only SEC team in that top 4, despite not even playing in the SEC championship game. So Oregon has a shot, sure, but I just think that Oregon moves up this week because of that ranked win over USC. But they were so far behind Texas Tech, 2 spots that is. I think the committee made a huge decision a couple weeks ago, moving Texas Tech into that, near that top 4 spot. And I just think that if Texas Tech wins the Big 12, I don't see Oregon jumping that Big 12 champion. I think it's more likely the Big 12 champion, if it's Texas Tech, gets into that first round bye opportunity.
Right now, Brad, you have Oregon at 6 in your rankings, Texas Tech at 5. Red Raiders' only loss was to Arizona State, who at the time was unranked. Ducks' only loss was to a ranked Indiana team, now 2nd in the country. With Oregon's win over a ranked USC team here in Week 13, why not move them ahead of Texas Tech?
I think you certainly could, but Texas Tech is a team, Hakim, that has played just more complete, more dominant. They're owning game control right now. Game control, by the way, is one of the biggest factors the committee has used this season. We've seen it in the past, obviously, it being a huge part of the protocol, but this season in 2025 specifically, game control is part of the reason why Notre Dame, by the way, is the 2nd highest rated 2-loss team.
Cardale, do you agree with that? Where would you put Oregon right now in your projected field?
You know, I like right where they're at right now, at 6, and I think when it's all said and done, they're going to stay around that 6 through 8 spot. And at the end of the day, the real argument comes from just the top 4 teams. The 6, 7, 8, and even 9 spot is all debatable, and they're going to continue to flip-flop as we get through championship week of the conference championship games for all of these major conferences. And at this point of the season, honestly, we talked about it for the last 3 weeks. We can talk about Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss, Notre Dame, and now even Oregon. You're almost putting yourself in a better position by not competing in your conference championship game or having an opportunity to go there because you're potentially hosting a home playoff game.
All right, we know the CFP committee has Notre Dame ahead of Miami, even though they have identical records, and the Hurricanes have a head-to-head win over the Fighting Irish. But we did get another data point in Week 13, a common opponent result. 2 weeks ago, Miami beat Syracuse 38-10. In Week 13, Notre Dame beat Syracuse 70-7, Brad. So what has to happen for Miami to get into the college football playoff?
I'll tell you what, man, I texted Richard a few hours ago before we came on, and I told him I am writing Miami's eulogy right now. Miami's not getting in the playoff unless Notre Dame loses to Stanford. That's not going to happen. Oklahoma loses to LSU. LSU barely beat Western Kentucky tonight. That's probably not going to happen. Or Alabama loses at Auburn. Now, maybe that's a possibility. So if I'm a Miami fan right now, I'm hoping the Hurricanes blow out Pitt next week, which could happen, may not happen. And then I am just a War Eagle fan next Saturday night in the Iron Bowl, because I think you have to have an upset during rivalry weekend for Miami to get in this playoff bracket. And by the way, this whole Pitt beating Georgia Tech on the road, that kicked off a ACC doomsday scenario where we may not even see an ACC team in this 12-team bracket.
Yeah, the chaos continues in the ACC. You mentioned the Georgia Tech loss to Pitt. Panthers can still make the ACC title game, but will need to beat Miami next week, have one loss by either Virginia or SMU. The simplest scenario is win and in for both Virginia and SMU. The Cavs play rival Virginia Tech. The Mustangs play at Cal. Richard, does all of this confirm that the ACC will be a one-bid conference, even though Brad thinks they might get left out altogether?
I do think they'll end up as a one-bid league, because I do think it's either going to be Virginia or SMU that ends up winning this league in the end. And I do think SMU will end up in the top 25 if they are to win out, just how I think it'll shake out. Obviously, Virginia is already in the top 25, and they were idle this week. But it is a treatise on the ACC and how much they are, or excuse me, how far away they are from the Big Ten, for instance, in sort of closing that gap where they are. You know, this ACC race is really wild and crazy coming down the stretch here. And Miami better watch out against Pitt, because Georgia Tech found out today that Pitt was certainly game planning for him for a lot more than 6 days. So Miami better watch out for those Panthers this weekend as well.
Yeah, funny how times has changed, because going into this season, clearly the top dogs who we thought was going to be competing for the ACC championship game, both are hoping they need a lot of things to happen that's out of their power and control to make that a reality. And the ACC is going to be by far the one bid team that's going to potentially make it to the college football playoffs. And at that point, we're looking at a championship game between Virginia and SMU, which is something that we all haven't prepared for and think that was going to be reality. But at the end of the day, I think the ACC found itself in a position where it's so much, each team in this position is untrustable, right? You think you're going into these weeks, you just saw what Louisville, how they looked today versus SMU, and 2 weeks ago we was thinking Louisville may have come out the ACC. So all of these things continue to happen, all these domino effects continue to confirm what we thought this would be a one-bid team.
Yeah, it just confirms that there is so much chaos in the ACC. The committee says, all right, you're only getting one. They'll just say, you get one. We'll give you one, and we'll wait to see who that one will be. Brad Crawford, Cardale Jones, and Richard Johnson here with us on CBS Sports HQ.